Hello, class. I'm Caitlin Miller, and today I'm going to be responding on the discussion topic of museum neutrality and museums as institutions. So prior to this week, I was not very familiar with the topic of museum neutrality. So I was really excited to be able to dive into the learning materials and kind of educate myself on this topic. Museum neutrality is the idea that museums are neutral ground for all art, all cultures, all races, ethnic backgrounds. Unfortunately, in many of our museums today, we tend to see a lack of neutrality. In fact, they're almost run as the government would be run, where there is a main dominance of a specific type of art. In our current culture, there's a dominance of white artists and white art. So that specific group is being able to determine the cultural display and the interpretation behind the art that is presented in museums. Now, that does not mean that the only art is being displayed is white artist work, because there's many museums, even my local museum has a Mayan exhibit and an African American exhibit. However, those exhibits are being curated by white artists and are mainly dominated by white professionals that are deciding how this art is presented and what cultural reference is given to it. This creates a lack in our museum system because people go to museums to become educated and to be exposed to different cultural aspects, but instead they're really only being shown a small portion that has been approved by this dominated culture, basically. Now, I personally do not feel, based on what we read this week, that this is something that is necessarily politically driven. It's just kind of how things have unfolded. And unfortunately, because of our country's history and the different segregations and the lack of support for minorities, there's been little growth in other aspects. So those minorities have not been able to really put forth the standing that the other more dominant races and cultures have. So we have a large dominance of white, of Western art, and the representation for Asian art, for Mayan art, Mexican, African American. It's just kind of been funneled. Due to political reasonings of the past that have not necessarily been art related, but have just been part of a larger problem at whole. Now, this is where the museum as institutions kind of comes into play here. What we were reading this week by Robert Smithson really kind of brought this to light for me, was the fact that bottom line, museums are operating as institutions. And even we saw from the controversy over the Emmett Till image and the open casket painting, that museum is operating as a business. It's needing funds, it's needing promotional material, marketing material. And so that museum is going to present, and all museums are going to present what they feel the audience wants to a certain extent. And so when we see this domination of white culture presenting the cultures in the way that they feel that is the most appealing, it's going to then draw in certain patrons. And so it's just kind of a vicious cycle. And so I really think that it's important for us to begin to bring museum neutrality back into light and kind of focus on how we can shift that, because over the years, especially over the past, century, we've seen a huge improvement of segregation and minorities and immigration and how they're being treated, but it's not a solved issue yet, and we can see it reflected in every aspect of our culture. And so it's harmful when art, something that is self-expression and is so open to interpretation and can speak in ways that sometimes political movements cannot, is being kind of muffled for these cultures. Um, I really was moved by the videos of Fred Wilson and what he had to say and his own experience as kind of being pinpointed of, well, which side are you going to fall on? Are you going to be a white artist and participate in that world, or are you going to be a Black artist and participate in this world? And I don't feel that art should be divided in any ways, because all of us need the opportunity to experience other cultures, and what better way than through art. So I think his opinions and his voice on the matter was very bold. And as he stated, I don't think it's anything that we are currently doing intentionally, but unfortunately it's kind of trickled over from our past, and no one is intentionally taking a stand to try and fix the problem and reverse that problem. So my opinion is that currently there is not much to show for museum neutrality, and that museums operating as institutions and operating as, a business as well as a place for public education is harmful overall to our public understanding of other cultures and our understanding of other art as well. I feel that there needs to be a change made so that we are able to truly understand not just a small representation of one culture's art, but to really understand the meaning and the movement behind it. And the only way to truly get that effect is to be involving people from those cultures who have experienced that. So I would definitely love to see in the next couple years museum neutrality begin to take place so that there's a better representation of all art forms.